Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.
Welcome to Game Over Montreal. Let's start it out like we did a lot last year. It's another Montreal Canadiens loss. We'll do a throwback because it felt like a Dominic Ducharme coached game out there today. The worst performance of the season for the Montreal Canadiens by far. From the outset, I mean, obviously, 2 goals when the ice is still shiny. The team wasn't focused. The goalie wasn't focused. I think this was probably Jake Allen's worst game of the year, but it wasn't all on Jake Allen. The entire team was pretty much terrible. And even in the first period where it seemed like they took control for a bit, that was mostly due to having the power plays. So Montreal Canadiens really were lucky that the score was as close as it was. Those 6 power plays, yeah, the Sabres got themselves in trouble. I don't think it was necessarily the Canadiens forcing them into things. This was a full-on stinker. It was not great. But with that said, this show is here for you to get your catharsis. So we're going to yell about this game a little bit. We'll probably not yell. I've got 2 kids asleep. But we're going to talk about this game and, look at the few tiny little positives if we can. And then we'll talk about prospects to cleanse your palate a little bit and look forward to, tomorrow when maybe they'll play a little bit better, to a couple seasons from now when maybe this team is a little bit better. And games like this aren't something that you have to fear, at least not very often. I have a great guest with me tonight. It's Mitch Brown. But before we get to that, we have to say, I think the way it's going to go. I thought it was going to be a loss tonight because I saw Craig Anderson was starting, and it seems like anytime Craig Anderson is starting against the Canadiens, it's a loss. But he wasn't really the difference tonight, let's be honest. Make your bet with Sports Interaction. Whether it's World Cup, hockey, football, or basketball, Sports Interaction has you covered. Bet pregame, live in play, or on one of our many prop bets. Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Join now and see all that sports betting has to offer. Want to bet? Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. That's sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. 19 plus. Please play responsibly. And as always, if you or one of your loved ones or anybody that you know has issues with gambling addiction, there are resources in the description of this video or in the podcast description if you're listening to it the next morning to help you find your way out. All right, I am going to welcome my guest in today. It's a fan favorite, one of the smartest people in the game, Mitch Brown. How you doing, Mitch? Oh, hold on one sec, Mitch. I think you're muted. I'm just going to fix that. It's having to do all these Zooms with different people. So before we get too far into it, and I screw up a whole segment, there we go. Now you should have levels and you should be able to talk.
I'm bored.
There we go.
This game was just boring. It was just boring. And
was
good for
boring.
Tage Thompson for putting on a show, and a little bit good for Jeff Skinner. JJ Peterka had some really fun moments in that game. Notice that I'm not really mentioning any Montreal Canadiens. It was a pretty boring game.
Yeah, it was not great. One team was very hungry. You could tell they lost 8 straight, but it was an ugly performance from the Montreal Canadiens. Even you could scrape out and say, Cole Caulfield scored and he maintained his 50 goal pace, but the goal he scored was, it was just a weak goal. I mean, good on him for taking the shot, but I don't know. That's not really the snipe job Cole Caulfield goal that you want to see, right? It was just a chance shot from the point.
It was a pretty cool shot, though. He had the little crossover setup, adjusting to it. That's a type of goal you would expect to see Caulfield get every now and then. I thought it was pretty fun. But how about as soon as the very first Sabres goal was really just a sign of things to come, right? Because Dahlin gets ahead of both Caulfield and Suzuki. Neither of them make an effort, and then it's a 4-on-3 going the other way. And then Tage Thompson does the whole being way better than everyone else thing. Sets up him with a drop pass, goes in the back of the net. And that was kind of just the way the rest of the game went. The second goal, I think it was Gooley who ended up turning the puck over. That wasn't really his fault. He didn't have any support, but then he chased up high, and then there was a 2-on-1 in front of the Canadiens net. And then Allen also didn't do a great job. And then the 3-0 goal, it was Savard who loses a stick in the corner, and then him and Dvorak combined to become the rare own man double screen in front of Jake Allen in the shooting lane. So it was just one of those games where everything just kind of goes wrong. Any minor mistake gets amplified because it goes instantaneously into the back of the net.
Yeah, it was not fun. I mean, I'm sure Sabres fans had fun, right? I know Kay in the chat was saying for a game with 7 goals, it wasn't even exciting. I'm assuming that it was a lot more exciting for Sabres fans, but for from the Montreal Canadiens perspective, there was not a lot to write home about tonight. I'm assuming that based on the turnaround to tomorrow in Columbus, they basically take this game and throw it in the trash for now and try to go right back out there and give a better effort, because like there's too much garbage to go through on film to be able to turn that around in one day.
These are NHLers, right? They all know what went wrong in this game. They all know their mistakes, everything like that. This isn't a massive systematic failure by any stretch of the imagination. It's a bunch of little things that went into the back of the net, and then in general, a lack of focus. They get paid big money to be focused, and they'll bounce back in a way that probably won't lead to them being a 500 team, but they'll have good games, they'll have bad games, they'll get blown out on occasion, and Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki will blow out other teams single-handedly every now and then down the stretch. Not every game's going to be fun, and that's just the way that it works when you're a team that has a talent deficit and is trying to play a style that is more suited for today's high pace, high offense NHL.
Yeah, 100%. And I know that people were kind of down on some of the defensemen tonight. I saw Jordan Harris really getting it in the comments on Twitter there, but man, I find it difficult to pick out any single person to be honest, because I think everybody really struggled. Maybe not. I mean, even Sean Monahan, I feel like he had some moments where he wasn't paying attention in the defensive zone. Like, there's nobody really on the roster tonight that I looked at and said, "Hey, this guy had a great performance." It's unfortunate because you want to bring, like, for this kind of show, what I know from last year is you've got to bring something to the table to get people happy, because you can't just hammer them all the time. It's not fun. And at the end of the day, what we're here to do is to have fun, to learn a little bit, and at the end of the day, feel a little bit better before our head hits the pillow. But there was not a lot in this game that stood out in a positive way. I will say, I think I'm done with the Matheson Edmondson pairing. I don't know why. Excuse me. St. Louis is stuck with that for a second night. I feel like he's trying to give everybody space to get their feet under them, like the guys that are coming back from being out or struggling to produce, guys like that, Dodonov. But the Edmondson Matheson thing, like Edmondson is so, like, he's struggling so much with focus and like mental mistakes, and then you put him with Matheson, who's still coming back from like 8 weeks off. It just doesn't make much sense. And Matheson, I thought, looked better tonight, but there was one play where I think it was like the end of the first period where he just full on forgot to skate back into the defensive zone and allowed the Sabres to beat out a very easy to beat out icing. And then they had the puck for like 90 seconds, just dominant. And it's stuff like that.
That's Mike Matheson, though. That's what he does. When he's healthy and he's been lined up for months, that's Mike Matheson. He's the bringer of chaos. He is the guy who gets dangled around in spectacular fashion like he did in the second period in this game, and then also dangles around someone in spectacular fashion. He activates off the point, does cool things, and then makes the most brain-dead play that you have ever seen from a defenseman making that much money and playing that many minutes. That's his game. It's amazing, and it's super fun to watch, and like, from like a scouting and an analyst perspective, it's awesome. Like, you like those kind of players because they make the job more entertaining. But yeah, that's what he does. He's always been like that. And you go back, you watch him in college, that was his game to a T. Some things never change. He's shored up a lot of little elements, but you thrive with Matheson and you die with Matheson. That's how it goes when he's on the team.
He had one shift in the third period, I think, that really sums up his game so far, and it was on the power play, and I think he made the mistake at the point, like he tried to shoot and it kind of went off a shin, exited the zone, and Tage Thompson went on like a one-on-one break, but he stuck with him, skated really well. took the puck away, and then started to rush the other way, made this like really dangerous looking zone entry, and then just held on too long. And Thompson came back, took the puck from him, and then got like a breakaway the other way. And you're like, come on, like there's more players on the ice, you guys. You don't have to just keep it between the two of you. But Matheson is wild. Canadians fans obviously haven't seen him that much so far, so I guess we don't really know what to expect from him overall. But yeah, he doesn't look. There was a comment here from I think it was Kay saying that he doesn't look ready for first pairing minutes yet. I don't think anybody on this team is ready for first pairing minutes. Like, that's kind of the issue.
Okay, shout out to Caden Gooley. I thought he had a pretty reasonably good game in spurts. There was a couple plays in the first period where he got inside position on the guy, won the battle, and then instead of throwing the puck off the glass and out, he took the second to look to the middle and then started a clean breakout. He also nearly killed a Buffalo Sabre, which was the classic Caden Gooley thing. And we also continue to see Caden Gooley really grow offensively. Like, even in a game like this, he's passing down low and then sprinting straight down the middle to get the puck back in the offensive end. Like, you were watching him develop and add new plays to his game while he's playing huge minutes against top competition in the NHL as a rookie. Like, that he's able to do this is so impressive to me, especially given all the narratives that were around him when he was drafted. Oh, they're just picking him because he's big and he hits, and it was never really true. But it's so cool to see his development just occur at like warp speed in the NHL in this role on a team like this.
Yeah, it is fun seeing him add like the mean streak that he's known for the last few games here. He's been a lot more physical trying to get guys. And I do think the penalty that he took was not a penalty to me. It didn't seem late, that hit at the blue line there. I thought he lined up the guy pretty well. Whereas I know that Dave Poulin was saying that the Edmondson penalty in the third period wasn't a penalty, but I think that was pretty clear interference, honestly.
Yeah, it was pretty blatant. The Gooley one, I think, like I would call that, but you also have to remember, like, my perspective is junior hockey, and like
Right.
that's kind of the hockey that I'm watching all the time. And in the WHL, they wouldn't normally call that, but in the OHL, you could get a couple games for that because you can't do any head contact and you can't hit someone when they're not looking at the play. So yeah, I don't know. It was a minor penalty, I thought. And I also thought, if Gooley really wanted to just annihilate the guy, he probably could have stepped into him more.
Yeah.
And he probably took a little bit off that one just to be certain. And then, of course, the whole scuffle happens. He throws that guy to the ice. Like, yeah, it's Caden Gooley. This is what he does. He took a little while to get comfortable in handling the puck before he decided he was going to start being the murderer that he was known as in the WHL. So full credit to him.
Yeah, trying to navigate who you can bully and who you can't bully, and when are the times that you can unleash that big hit and still stay in position. He's definitely one of the guys who continues to make progress, right? I think that Harris has had a little bit more of a rough stretch the last week or two where I don't know if I would have scratched him as St. Louis did, just because the other option, I feel like Xhekaj has actually struggled more. And I definitely wouldn't be pulling Kovacevic out of the lineup right now. I feel like he's been probably their second best defenseman overall this season. So I understand that there's like the coaching staff has spoken to the young defenseman and told them like there's going to be a rotation here, and you're going to get in games, but you're also going to miss games, and they all seem to be okay with it. I feel like Gooley is not part of that group though. I feel like even though he's the youngest one, he's not going to be rotated out. But I would like to see Harris and Kovacevic stay in the lineup as much as possible down the stretch. And I know it's probably not the best strategy for keeping the value high for, trade deadline, but I feel like you could load manage Edmondson and Savard a little bit because they're the ones who seem to be making the biggest mistakes. And Savard is valiant of a job as he's done this year, being the best David Savard that he can be at his age. We talked before about the value that he brings in a purely defensive perspective that maybe isn't captured by, public models where, he just gets that little bit of body or stick in front of a shot that puts things off to an edge, or like his defensive positioning is just really good in certain situations. But 2 to 3 times a game, David Savard is amazing at turning a nothing play into a something play for the opposing team, and
Yeah.
that is just not great.
He has major grenade handling sometimes. Like
Yep.
and him and Gooley kind of exchange it back and forth. Gooley be like, "Oh, I don't like this. I'm just gonna throw it to Savard." And then Savard's like, "Man, I can't do this." And then Savard just like hucks it straight to the other team. It's an interesting dynamic between those two. It seems like is it unreasonable to say that Gooley is, for better or worse, the team's number one defenseman? Like
Yeah.
he's the guy who does everything
Yeah.
competently, like more competently than anyone else does at this stage. It doesn't always show up statistically, but I think in terms of like just pure competency in all areas of the game, he might be the best of their big minute players right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at what he's capable of doing and the arc of his career, there's no one that's going to pass him in that respect. Like, I would assume that this year, on a like per game basis, Matheson will probably get more minutes just based on how St. Louis is relying on him already, and seems to be getting on the power play already. But overall, like Gooley is very much destined to be the first pairing guy that they, hopefully they can find somebody who fits in there with him that would take it to from like a decent first pairing to a good first pairing. But he's in that slot, right? Like we can say you're trying to fill slots and you're doing a rebuild, right? And you got like the Suzuki Caulfield slots, and then you don't know if the Doc is going to fit into the center slot or the wing slot, looking like wing right now. But Gooley is certainly locked in on that first pair for now. It would be quite the feat, I think, for him to be unseated.
Yeah, and there's a lot of defensive help incoming with the Montreal Canadiens, and we're going to see a lot more experimentation over the next couple of years to kind of see where everyone fits, who fits together. And there's a certain small defenseman who seems to be a pretty good fit with Caden Gooley in the next few years. Lane Hudson and him would seem that they would have some good chemistry, a good meshing of styles, perhaps.
That's a great point, Mitch, and that'll lead into the positive side of talking about the Montreal Canadiens right now. We're going to ignore this game for the rest of the show. We've talked about it enough. It doesn't deserve to be talked about it anymore. But before we get into the prospects, I have to tell everyone here, thanks for being here on a game like tonight. I know that it's just looking at how the numbers work for this show and for other shows. For the Maple Leafs, when they lose, numbers through the roof. Everybody wants to come together and yell. But after last season, I think it has a lot to do with last season and all that losing. When the Canadiens lose, we don't have as many people in here. People don't want to talk about losses. They want to talk about wins. They want to talk about things going well. So we'll talk about the prospects. But before we do, remember, if you're here and you like the show, hit the like button because it helps us out. We've been getting killed by the YouTube algorithm lately. For whatever reason, it doesn't want to show game over stuff all around people who are fans of these teams. So help us out. Drop a like. And if you really like the show, hit that share button on YouTube and share it to your favorite social media of choice. Get everybody that you know to come in and hang out with us, because how could it be any better? More people. It's more fun. Can read the chat. Have some fun. All right, so now that we've got that out of the way and the shameless self-promotion, let's talk about some prospects. Lane Hudson, I don't remember if it was you I talked to before, Mitch, but Hudson and Gooley are both lefties, right? So who would you have move over if they were to be paired together?
Well, the natural one would be Hudson is more skilled with the puck, so you would put him on the other side. But then you remember Gooley's skating, his defensive skating, his instincts. So it might work with Gooley on the other side as well. And on top of that, there's a lot of natural flexibility there with the way the Montreal Canadiens play the game now. It's not as simple as left guy stays on the left side of the ice the entire time, right guy stays on the right side. There's a lot of crisscrossing, moving back and forth, a lot of activation. And so defensemen aren't always coming back into their natural sides. And of course, when you have someone like Adam Nicholas and the rest of the player development staff, they're going to find ways to make players more effective in every position of the ice. The defenders are going to get better at playing the half wall, just by the skills that he's teaching them. And it's going to be the same for anyone in any position. They're moving towards positionless hockey. And so I think that's going to be less of an emphasis by the time Lane Hudson gets to the NHL.
And I know, like Lane Hudson has, that ridiculous offensive instinct and transition ability. Like the skill is off the charts, but there are some issues that he needs to work on to get to the NHL, right? Like I've heard, obviously I don't have the chance to watch him game in and game out. I don't want to, like my main thing is I want to, whenever I talk about prospects, I defer to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. I never want to present myself as an expert because it'd be dishonest, but I've talking to other people, they say that he has some issues with pivoting. Do you see any progress with that this year?
So I think I want to tie that into like a broader discussion of his skating because I don't think the pivoting itself is a massive issue, or I don't think it's something that specifically you need to target to fix it. Lane Hudson right now is not, I guess, an NHL skater. Can he get there, and will he need to get there? Are the two questions I think. And the first thing is yes, he absolutely can get there. He's like what 155 pounds. Like he's going to add weight. He's going to get stronger. That's going to make his stance deeper, more powerful. He's going to get more explosive. And the stride's always going to be a little weird. It's always going to be a little wonky to watch, but that's partly body composition. You look at the NHL, there are so many different strides that have success in the NHL. A lot of it just comes down to being strong and explosive. And then these players can make it work. Like Trevor Zegras, stride looks ugly, doesn't have any issue finding space in the NHL whatsoever. So I think as he gets stronger, his depth is going to improve. He's going to become even more elusive. The pivots will improve. The stride will improve. He's going to get faster. Now, how long that takes, I don't know. I mean, that's why I'm a dude who's sitting on a computer here talking to you instead of, actually telling Lane Hudson how to improve his skating. Now, and then the other part of it is, does he need to have skating as a massive advantage or whatever to play in the NHL? And I don't think he does. He's very deceptive, oftentimes through like more subtle ways than you see from, say, Nick Suzuki. Nick Suzuki likes to do that thing where he slows up, he freezes everyone with a really long, drawn-out fake, and then he makes that laser beam precision pass to Cole Caulfield. We've seen him do it a million times. Lane Hudson is more like quick weight shift one way, quick weight shift another way, like turning his body in a million different directions at once. He's overloading defenders with so much different information. And so he will be able to play in the NHL without being, so-called super explosive or having that dynamic speed or whatever. I don't think that's going to be a huge challenge for him. Now, Hudson, of course, does like say the skating is more mechanical, and then you have to start trying to address like specific skating areas. And defensively, it's messy. I think breakouts are still messy. They've really improved, mind you. He's more patient now, but his skating doesn't always have his skating, I guess, doesn't find the same level of separation without the puck than it does with the puck, because with the puck he's able to create those advantages. Without it, his actions are a response to what his opponents are doing. Right. And so as a smaller defenseman, you have to take control of what your opponents are doing. Adam Fox is really good at this. He gets on the player as soon as possible. He drives them to the middle. It's the early gap control. He gets all those stops at the red line. Lane Hudson doesn't do that yet. And so that's going to be, for me, Lane Hudson, it's going to be natural skating growth, and it's going to be finding ways that he can better use his current assets to make the NHL, playing that tighter gap, playing a game that's more focused on changing pace on breakouts and stuff like that. And of course, just letting him eat offensively, letting him run free, letting him do his thing, because he doesn't rely on set patterns or set plays like a lot of players do. He's just endlessly creative. And that in itself is like such an innate advantage. We saw it in this game. Like, look at Rasmus Dahlin in this game. He had such a huge advantage over everyone because he's so innately creative. Look at Nick Suzuki. He has huge advantages over other players in the NHL because he can just come up with solutions to things that other players would like never even conceive of, that they wouldn't even be able to think of in the moment, let alone have the ability to react to it. So Hudson is going to be one of the most fascinating development projects I think we have seen in hockey. And like, I'm very optimistic about his NHL future now watching it. Like, I track a lot of data and I've tracked a lot of games on him. And like, he's doing stuff that right now as a playmaker that only 4 other defensemen have done in college in the last few years. Adam Fox, Quinn Hughes, or 5, I guess, Scott Perunovich, Sean Barents, and Cale Makar. Like these are all guys. Like these are real players. Sean Barons is more of a prospect, same with Prunovich, but both of those players could make the NHL and be top four options. So yeah, I mean, I think people should be really excited about Lane Hutson, the potential that he has going forward. It just might take a little bit longer than we're used to seeing from guys who get top prospect hype. Sorry,
Yeah.
that was a really long answer, but
No,
I just love this stuff.
but it's a good answer though. You have like there's questions here asking like what is it about his skating, and I feel like you answered that. Um, obviously, casing. I really hope he works out. I think everybody in the Montreal Canadiens, both staff and fan base, really hope that he works out because he's the kind of guy that if he works out, it's a home run, right?
Yeah,
Lane Hudson's not going to make the NHL and be like a 20-point defenseman. It's going to be a completely different thing than what we've seen before. And I know I don't remember if it was you who pointed it out, Itch, on Twitter, but he's doing this over a point per game production in the NCAA right now on the second wave power play. Like he's not actually
eh,
getting the primo minutes.
well, you could argue that BU's second power play unit is better than their first,
Oh,
like
okay, well,
forwards wise, and like the difference in terms of how much they're going out there is only like 20 seconds per game or whatever.
okay,
So like it's not a pronounced difference. And
that
he's
makes
leads
sense.
the team right now by like 40 seconds or something in even strength ice time as well. So like, well, he's listed on the second pairing, like he's essentially, for all intents and purposes, playing top pairing minutes.
Well, I think that's good to know. As an 18-year-old in the NCAA, I feel like it's pretty rare for a young defenseman who's not that big to get first pairing minutes essentially at even strength on a college team. And I feel like
Yeah,
the college schedule is probably the best thing for him, right? Where he has these like little issues that he needs to work on with his skating. He needs to like build up a little bit of NHL size. It seems like this is the perfect situation for him where the Canadians can afford to slow roll him a little.
absolutely. Give him, he has the weekdays to train, weekends to get in games, and then of course you have what is largely a much shorter season. So there's going to be more time for him to go over video with the development staff during the week before and after his games. He's going to have more energy throughout the summer to get into his training and so on. So yeah, it's a perfect fit for him. The college route is always a great route, and for him, it's no different. Now it sounds like I'm trying to sell people on NCAA hockey.
Well, I mean, there's good fits for different players, right? I think that's
Right.
the big takeaway from development paths is like not everybody needs the same path. Some people need extra time in the weight room and more time between games, a more scholastic approach. And I know, speaking of scholastic, we're gonna have to talk about Owen Beck, but Rock Smasher in the chat is saying that Josh Waugh 5-point night tonight. He had a little bit of a not a skid, but like just based on his own level of production last year and early this year, he wasn't producing as much for a couple weeks there. But all of a sudden, insane levels of production from Joshua Waugh. How is he progressing this season? It seems like he's putting more emphasis on playmaking.
He's about the same player as he was last year, but yes, he's definitely trying to pass more. I don't think that's a like last year he was a dump and chase player who then once his team secures possession, he really comes alive. And this season he's trying to make more controlled plays, usually through his teammates rather than dumping it himself and getting it. And then in the offensive zone, you see him using the threat of a shot a little bit more to open up a little bit of space. But I don't think he's taken like a massive step mechanically or physically or decision making wise. Like his production is incredible, and there are a lot of really interesting qualities about him. Again, he's this puck retriever, shooter, playmaker hybrid that you don't really see a ton of. Um, so I don't know if the production aligns with what his ultimate NHL upside is going to be. I think he's probably more of like a third line type scorer, and just the mechanics mean that there's a chance he might not make it to that rate. But again, like Lane Hutson, he's another player who is just so fascinating to watch, right? Because you see these point totals and you're like, he must be just electrifying. And then you watch him and you're like, he dumped the puck in 15 times in one game. Like so he's a really cool player in a lot of different ways. And I think this season, especially with like having Ethan Gauthier on his line, who's a top prospect for the 2023 NHL draft, and Justin Gill, they're kind of forcing him to be more of a distributor because they have more shooting skill than he's used to playing with. So ideally, you could trade him to a team in the OHL or the WHL, but I think he's making enough progress given his current situation.
So have you seen? I know we talked last year about like his big issue that I think was like transitioning to pro hockey was because he was able to score from basically doing whatever he wanted. That he
Yeah.
was not lazy. Lazy is the wrong term, but he was satisfied with what he could do to just rip up the queue, and at times like didn't use his teammates very well. Are you seeing improvement in that area? Are you seeing like a little bit of diversification in his offense, or not quite yet?
A tiny little bit for the reasons that I laid out. And just for context here, like scoring in junior and scoring in the NHL are two very different things. If you have, say, a slightly above average like shot by NHL standards, you can just stand from the top of the circle in junior and score 30 goals. Like
Yeah.
it's nothing. One area where generally the average OHLer shoots or the average CHLer shoots 6%, guys like Waugh can shoot 18, 20% from there. And they won't be able to do that in the NHL. So for guys like Waugh, it's really important to be able to take a puck from the boards or take a puck from where you would normally shoot and get that extra meter or two closer to the inside, whether you're passing to a teammate who then shoots or bringing it in yourself. And I haven't seen that yet from him, specifically the creating more space and opportunity for his shot, which is something that Owen Beck has gotten a lot better at. But I have seen a little bit more playmaking from him, which I think, again, it's not as significant as I would have liked to see this year, but it is enough that I don't think we can say that he's stagnating.
Right, right. And I feel like he's another one that the gaudy junior numbers, a lot of people expect. Like, actually, you know what? I feel like the fan base is generally relatively reasonable about Joshua Watt, probably because he's not like a first round draft pick. But despite the gaudy numbers, he's not a guy who's going to jump out of junior straight into the NHL next year. He's a guy who's probably going to spend a couple or even 3 seasons in the American Hockey League after this one to get his game to a place where he's a good NHL player. And that's fine. Like people can be okay with that. Like that's what makes sense for him developmentally.
Yeah, and that would be a great outcome if he makes the NHL. He was a late rounder. He still has many qualities that don't suggest a great NHLer anytime soon. And then he's going to go into a situation where development seems to be going really great. He's going to go to a team that can hopefully recapture some of their magic that they had last year. And I think it should work out for him. It just might be a little bit more drawn out. And to go back to that, Montreal Canadiens fans are actually like way above average in terms of like their expectations for prospects and the type of
Oh, for sure.
information they want to hear about prospects. Sometimes you tweet stuff out and people are like, "Oh, but he's like 5'8." It's like, yeah, so I don't care that he's like 5'8". I don't I like. Why does this matter? Why does this matter that much? And Montreal Canadiens fans are like very interested into like the sort of the little things that they do that separate junior players from NHLers, and I think that's why it makes having discussions about players like Joshua Waugh so engaging.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of the little plays that separate guys, let's talk about Owen Beck because one of the smartest players at his age, especially, that I've ever seen, and I've only seen him a handful of times. He seems to be having a fantastic breakout year in the OHL after having like he had okay numbers last year, but nothing that jumped off the page. And you wanted to see him put up really strong offensive numbers along with his like incredible faceoffs and defensive skills and like all around the ice except for necessarily translating directly to goals. This year it's translating directly to goals. How have you seen Owen Beck this year?
Well, I mean, he's Owen Beck. He's phenomenal. Like everything this guy does is amazing. He's every single shift, he has a play. When you watch the when I go from watching a junior hockey game to watching an NHL game, the biggest difference is that in junior games, most players have a few shifts where they do something interesting. Like Connor McDavid, I just watched a bunch of his draft year tape, 3 to 5 shifts a game. They were just absurd compared to everyone else's, right? Because it's Connor McDavid. And that's how the vast majority of players work. Owen Beck is way more detail oriented than we're used to seeing from junior players, and so every single shift has something. has a really good read down low to get open, has a really good way that he wins a battle, seals off back pressure, starts the breakout, has a really good play where he creates an advantage for his teammate by drawing pressure and then passing through it. And something that I alluded to earlier is his shot. He always had an NHL shot. Like, this is something that people have been talking about with Beck going back to his AAA years, but he's much better at creating space for a shot now. He had a goal against Barrie that was a great example, and a goal fairly recently where he steps into the shooting lane, the defender reaches in, and then he kind of pump fakes, goes around, then shoots around them. In the NHL, getting space for your shot is at a premium. It's not just because it's defenders close space, but it's also goalies. Goalies are hard to beat. You need to fake them out. You need to move the puck around before you shoot, so then they don't know where it's coming from. And Owen Beck is really starting to figure that out. And what makes Beck even more impressive is that, like, he's taken another step defensively. He still doesn't have particularly high quality of line mates. If Beck had high quality of line mates, the man would have scored 80 points last year. And he still doesn't. And he's almost, I think he has 14 goals in 17 games. And this is a guy who is a playmaker. So it's extremely exciting to watch him. And then you just consider the context around what he's doing. It's very impressive. He's always been an intelligent player, but you see him starting to weed out the untranslatable plays, the stuff that he won't be able to do in the NHL. And like, you watch me, like, this guy is an NHLer in junior, and it is amazing to watch. It's truly one of the most enjoyable experiences in the entirety of the CHL right now.
And that's like the kind of thing that I think Canadiens fans get so excited about a player like this, because it almost, like, I know it's not can't miss, because if you're a can't miss prospect, you're really like a top 5 pick. And even then, there's still busts. But because Beck is so detail oriented and so good at so many things, it just seems like no matter what he turns into, there's an NHLer there in some role, right? And like,
Exactly.
the floor is extremely high, and maybe the ceiling isn't extremely high. Like, you're not talking about a future first line center in the NHL, perhaps, but it's not super low either. Like, he's that rare pick where, you see often NHL teams go for, like, in outside of the first round, like the high floor, low ceiling guys, where he's like high floor, medium ceiling, if that makes sense.
Well, even then, like, we continue to see new layers to his game all the time. Like, as I was just talking about, creating space for his own shot, and you add in the playmaking skill, and you add in the development staff that the Montreal Canadiens have. I just watched. Sorry, I keep bringing that up, but I just watched that video of Adam Nicholas, and I was like, man,
Same.
I want to go out on the ice right now. I want to do that thing that Pateri Nurmi did. I don't drink coffee. I'm gonna drink some coffee and just have that playing in the background of, oh, what a weapon. Um, but I really, I think Beck is improving at such a rate that it's probably, like, it's not fair to put a cap on his ceiling at this point. I think probability wise, he's still probably a mid-six guy, but I don't think it's fair to turn around and be like, oh, he's never going to play top line. It's like, man, first off, if I could do that, I'd be making a lot of money in this industry. But second thing is, at the rate he's improving, I don't want to be the guy who's going out here saying use that. Oh, and Beck's going to use his motivation to prove wrong. So yeah, I think I really like his development, and I think he's like, if he doesn't make the NHL in some capacity, I'll just quit. I'll go back to being a line cook.
All scouting becomes bullshit, and nothing matters. The points don't matter. Everything's made up. Yeah. It would be absolutely wild at this rate, just to see, like, how much he's progressed, how quickly, like, how many facets his game has. It is incredible watching Beck play. Now, obviously, the idea of Beck joining the team next year is, like, very enticing for people who just want to see him up close. But would you say, because of how long he stuck around in training camp this year, and how, like, his rate of improvement is so severe — severe is the wrong word, but the good kind of severe — there is a chance of him actually pushing his way into the lineup next year? Because I'm assuming that Sean Monahan will probably be gone, and Christian Dvorak maybe as well. So there's going to be spots up the middle.
Yeah, I think there's a real chance that he makes it, or at least gets a lengthy look. Of course, making the NHL first doesn't guarantee future. I mean, I just look
True.
back at Blake Spears, who had a bit of a similar profile, well-rounded, detail-oriented player, made the NHL in his D+2, and then never really became a full-time NHLer in any significance after that. And Beck is more skilled than Blake Spears. And of course, there are other factors. It's not as simple as a player just busting for the sake of busting. There are so many things that go on off and on ice that dictate this. Coaches make decisions that impact players' careers forever and so on. But yeah, Beck is pretty clearly to me a confident NHL projection and a guy who as soon as next year could be in the NHL and not get cratered. Whether he'll be good or not remains to be seen, but don't think he'll get killed if he's playing a fourth line role or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Last guy that we're gonna bug you about, Philip Misar, who came into the NHL and took everything over by storm, or not OHL. Sorry, I think I said NHL there. Uh, Crazy hot start, changed things a lot for his team, but has slowed down a little bit. Is there anything to worry about with Philip Misar, or is this just sometimes things don't go your way?
Well, the only thing you have to worry about is inflated expectations, right? People think that any guy who plays professional hockey in Europe is going to come in and destroy. It's like Oscar Ullison played in the SHL. He was below a point per game. Philip Lucelle played in the SHL was 1.17 points per game, which is the same as Massar's right now. So it is not a guarantee that pro experience leads to scoring. And I think that sending him to Kitchener was the right call. There are a lot of things that he needs to get better at. Going to the OHL is a great place to do it. It's not just that he, has the tools to destroy the O, because he doesn't have the tools. You can have all the tools and you still won't be able to destroy the O. You need to know how to use them. You need to know how to get to the inside, how to create advantages with your skill set. And for Machar, that's still a learning process. And I think Kitchener, where there's a good top end on the team, they play a competitive schedule against great teams. And of course, they have a great facility, and their rink has fantastic food, if I must say. Both media room and on the concourse too. Fantastic. But it's a great environment for him to be in, I really think. And it's the right place. Of course, his production was never going to be, what was it at, like 3.5 points per game or whatever. He was never going to do that. But I think right around what he's doing now is probably what we're going to see the rest of the way, around 1.2 points per game to close out the season, hit maybe 80, 85 and 60 games, 65 games, 68 games, bring it into the playoffs, and that'll be considered a win. And then he can turn pro next year, get into the development system a little bit more in Laval, and presumably continue his upward ascent.
All right, great. I mean, I think he looked so electrifying in moments during the preseason that people expected him to be, you know, 2 points per game in the OHL, but it's very difficult to maintain a pace like that.
Yeah.
Even if you played pro hockey before that, I think people underestimate how, like, it's a grind just like any season, right? Except for you're sitting on a bus between games instead of flying in a chartered plane like in the NHL. All right, before I let you go, Mitch, I'm going to ask you just quickly. I know that we didn't discuss them beforehand, but just a couple Canadians prospects that nobody really seems to be talking about in junior,
Sure.
but are still putting up decent numbers. Who of these three do you think has the best chance of becoming an NHLer between Riley Kidney, Jared Davidson, who nobody ever really talks about, but has 23 points in 13 games for the Seattle Thunderbirds, and Vinzez Rohrer?
Oh, Roar, easy. Yeah,
Yeah?
easy one. Davidson is old and the tools aren't super great. Riley Kidney, tools aren't super great, has some decision-making issues. He's kind of similar to Wall in the sense that he creates and scores through doing stuff that isn't necessarily going to work in the NHL. Vincenz Roar is like 165 pounds of pure violence. He's gotten better at getting to the inside. His playmaking has taken a big step, and defensively, he's just a monster. And there's nothing better than watching this like 5'11, 165-pound guy like reverse hit some 6'2" monster into the corner like it's nothing. Yeah, this guy's great. He's gonna play. He's gonna be awesome to watch.
So from that, I'm guessing that Rohrer is going to be a fan favorite right away when fans get to see him a little bit up close.
Oh man, the next time the 67s are on national television, he's going to be a fan favorite. He plays one of the most fan-friendly styles you've ever seen. And on top of that, like the skill has taken a big step up this year. And like I don't know. He's not going to be a play driver in the NHL. I don't think that's going to happen. Who knows? Maybe, but I don't think that's likely. I think more likely he's a good, solid fourth liner who brings the violence, brings a bit of fun, brings some flashiness, and doesn't get killed, on the underlines because he knows how to play defense and he knows how to keep the puck out of his own end.
Awesome. All right. I hope everyone who's tuned in tonight has something positive from this talk that helps them sleep a little bit better, because I know it can get emotional watching your team lose 7-2 to a team that just lost 8 straight. But somebody had to lose to the Buffalo Sabres eventually, and it was the Montreal Canadiens. So they're back at it tomorrow night against the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're going to try to avenge what they did to Sam Montembeault in the last game. Dominating that game against the Blue Jackets, but giving up the most ridiculous scoring chances possible, which seems to be what this Canadiens team kind of likes to do. When they're at their best, they dominate territorially and then just give up the most crazy scoring chances, 2-on-1s, 2-on-nones, giveaways to the front of the net, all that kind of stuff. So it's hard on the goalies, but hopefully they win one for Monty after giving him a tough sled last time around. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks Mitch for coming on with me here. And obviously we'll be right back at it tomorrow night. Before we close it out, Mitch, tell everybody where they can find your work.
You can head to epringside.com, get a subscription there. Black Friday's coming up. We're going to have a big sale, and you can follow me on Twitter at Mitchell Brown, and then go to our YouTube page. I just published a 16-minute video on how Cale Makar became the NHL's most dynamic defenseman. I went all the way back to the AJHL, and David St. Louis got cool videos breaking down the non-Bedard prospects of the 2023 draft that you might want to check out if you're feeling like you need a little bit of hope.
There you go. All right, everybody, follow Mitch Brown, and if you really like him, go support his work on his Patreon as well. There'll be a link in the description here. He does great work that you can't find anywhere else. Thanks for tuning in. It was fun chatting with you all tonight, and hopefully we get to talk about a win tomorrow.